Hello, everyone. This is Apostle Aladdin, and with me is Secular Spirit. Today, we'll be having a chat, I suppose. That's one way to start a friendly chat, because I wanted to host him on my channel to talk about just whatever comes to mind and whatever people in the comments would like to ask us about. The idea is to get to know us, the people behind these two characters, I suppose, and witness some of the conversations that we have behind the scenes. So, Secular Spirit, how are you doing today? Do you want me to just call you that or
You can call me Alim. That's
Alim?
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How's your day
Which
going?
which which fake pseudonym should you call me by? Yeah.
Wait, I thought Alim was your real name. Come on, man. Don't don't tell them. Um, what were you up to today before this stream?
I was actually playing soccer.
You
I'm a
were.
big I'm a big soccer fan, watching, playing. So in a rare, sunny, sort of, I say warm, well, relative to Canadians, like 4 or 5 degrees is actually warm.
Oh wow.
Rare sunny Sunday. I decided to play with a few people in my neighborhood, and it was glorious. It was glorious. I lost though.
Yeah. It's A for
Yeah,
effort.
yeah. The soccer gods give and they take.
What was that ever a ritual for you, like on Fridays, for example, or something back in the Middle East?
Back in the days,
Yeah, back in the days.
like a soccer related ritual.
Yeah, like a weekly kind of game that you would play, or not really?
We would play every day in recess. Actually, like me and my classmates, we just someone would bring a ball and we'd have a big game. But true story, and this is kind of sad, really. It just kind of shows also the kind of school I was in. I was in a pretty I wouldn't say prestigious, but pretty exclusive, maybe, uh, private school in Dubai, in the UAE. And their solution to any problem was just classic, Arab dictator suppression of it. So here was what the problem was: people would bring soccer balls to recess to play games. So there'd be games all over the place. But I don't know how this started to happen, but the older kids would steal the younger kids' balls, and then one of the older kids would just boot it as hard as they could just to the other end of the field, or like the playground. Sorry, we had a massive playground, and
Oh, keep flexing. Keep flexing on us.
yeah, yeah. No, I was lucky; it was a good school.
Yeah.
In other ways. Anyway,
Except
so
the
they would,
soccer aspect.
yeah. Well, what you're gonna see. So this older kid would boot it and like high in the air, and then all the kids whose ball it belonged to would run and try to catch it. But then another older kid would, because they're bigger and faster, would get to it first, and then he'd boot it to the other side of the field, and until it became this trend that happened every recess. There would be 50, 60 kids chasing a ball back and forth over and over again. It was ridiculous. And the younger kids would complain. And I want you to try and guess what the school faculty's solution to this problem was.
No
Just take a guess.
soccer. Just no soccer at all.
No balls.
No
You are no
balls.
longer allowed to bring a soccer ball to
It's
school.
like we went to the same school. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I remember thinking it was so unfair and ridiculous that the older kids, who are the ones who are causing the problem, just don't get punished. Like the younger kids get punished. Everyone gets punished. It was ridiculous. But yeah, it's a very classic, almost like military approach to discipline, where if someone did something bad but no one wants to say who it is who did the bad thing, everyone is punished.
So you all bear the original sin of the first
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. And just one last comment on the subject.
Mhm.
What ended up happening was kids would start playing soccer with uh, like little water bottles. It became like this whole sophisticated technique where you took the water bottle, you filled it with a little bit of sand just so you have like a little bit of weight to it,
Interesting.
and then they would just play with that. No one's gonna steal a freaking crushed water bottle, and they would play every day. Those kids every day with a crushed water bottle in a pretty expensive private school. So
Yeah. Well, kids are kids. I mean,
yeah,
I don't remember. I mean, the bottle kind of worked, but we didn't fill it with sand. That's a genius idea. I wonder why nobody thought of it in my school. But they would just crush a can of like Pepsi or whatever and just play with that. Um, Good times, good times. But how did we even get here? What was I asking you
You
about
asked me what I did
soccer?
earlier today, and I was
Yeah, that's
reminiscing about my soccer youth.
your childhood.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
we would play every day. Yeah, yeah. Like it was a really big deal where I grew up, and I had the classic, young teenager dreams of becoming a professional soccer player, and well, clearly that didn't work out.
How do we know that? I don't know.
Yeah, that would be amazing if I was like a semi-professional player in like Bolivia or something. I'm not actually in Canada. They do exist. They do. Someone from my school is a, a professional player who plays for Belize, randomly, which is a country in like Central America.
Mm.
So someone did accomplish the dream. I'm not even
Well,
sure if he was from Belize. I'm not sure how that happened.
that kind of ties into the question, the poll that we have in the live chat,
Oh yes.
about your job. Let me read the question again. Do you find your job slash career fulfilling? Do you think someone who made their job, playing soccer in Bolivia, for example, do you think they find it fulfilling?
I don't know. There are a lot of professionals who play at a lower level, and so they're not making crazy money. They're probably making, however much an average person who works in an office makes. But it's I'd say the problem with that as a career is you're pretty much done by the time you're 30. If you're lucky, you can keep it going until you're 35. So it's not really much of a future you can build on in terms of all the important things we got to do in life, hoarding wealth and having investment portfolios and buying real estate and all that. It's definitely a thing where you play for your passion and sacrifice a lot of other things. So maybe it does fulfill a lot of them.
But at what point does it become a job rather than a passion?
I was wondering about that because um, I was watching a Canadian or like the American Canadian Soccer League MLS game the other day live, and it just doesn't seem fun at that level because there's so much pressure and there's so many people who are pretty good at it. So you're not really allowed to do much beyond just playing within the tight, narrow systems that the coaches hammer into you. And there's people competing for your position, and games are always low scoring. I mean, that's not everything to soccer, but it really does just seem like a tedious job at a certain point where you maybe for a lot of people you get your chance to shine sometimes, kind of the same way you get to score the goal or win something every now and then. But when it's playing lower level league in Canada or Belize or Bolivia, and not many people are watching, there isn't much glamour.
I bet there's one viewer who's like a soccer player in Canada or something who's just upset at us right now. Uh, so if you're there, we're not criticizing your life choices. We're just salty that we have to work from an office. So that's what's going on right now.
Well, I am luckier than most. I work from home, so I didn't have to do the whole. I don't know about you. Like I didn't have to do the whole awkward, tough transition from being used to working in office to being alone all day, 5 days a week,
Oh, like the
working
work from
working from
home.
home. Yeah, the
Yeah.
WFH lifestyle. I already had it, so in that sense, I was pretty lucky pandemic wise because I didn't have to do any transition. I was like, oh, I'm already pretty much self isolating anyway most of the time.
Flexing on us again, didn't suffer for the past 2 years. Take note of that. No, I didn't like that transition, to be honest. As you can tell, I'm still wearing my mask to this day, so a little bit of COVID trauma going on there. Um, but seriously, though, I feel like I work better around other people, and just being around my cats. They're not the best coworkers. They always just want to sleep around. Very
Not the best
inappropriate.
conversations with them, eh?
No, no, no. By the time I'm talking to them, my mental health must have, declined very, very much for actually having a conversation. They inappropriately touch me all the time. There's nobody I can complain to, Your coworker sitting on your lap, that's not cool. But yeah, jokes aside, I feel like I work better in a work environment, kind of having those things separate. But it's weird how some people are thrilled about working from home, and some people absolutely hate it. There's kind of no in between, it seems.
Hmm. Like, would you say you're just kind of generally speaking, it's kind of hard to answer it, I suppose, but would you say your career job fulfills you?
That's too big of a question. I'm at a stage in my life where I'm not sure yet. Like it's a journey to figure out what it is that makes me tick. And aside from paying the bills and doing a job, for the sake of having a job, I feel like I'm still searching for that thing that I'm very passionate about, and it takes a lot of trial and error. So I'm getting there. Yeah. What about you?
Well, before I get to me, like this was something we discussed off air of could you ever potentially see yourself doing something like what you're doing on YouTube as like a full-time career or some variation of it where you're just, creating content? If not this, then in some other kind of topic or
I highly doubt that because so I make videos. I'm very driven by like my productivity just goes to whatever I'm interested in. So if I'm interested in a topic or it's on my mind, I'm more likely to make a video about it. And that's not always the case. Sometimes I have stuff that gets in the way and it's logistically impossible. But I would never make a video about something I'm not very interested in. Uh, so to make it a job would mean that I'd have to make videos at times when I'm not interested, and I'd have to make it more of a social media type of channel where I'm trying to make certain connections. What are they called? Parasocial relationships with the viewers, and not that I don't appreciate my subscribers or anything, but uh, to evolve it into some kind of brand of mine. Like, hey, this is Aladdin, and what's up? This is vlog number whatever. I
yeah,
don't think
where's your
I,
merch, man? You need some
yeah,
merch.
yeah, the masks that everybody keeps asking about.
There
Uh,
is demand for the merch.
yeah, but now masks are no longer going to be as fashionable all over the world. So a little bit too
True.
late on that gravy train. Um, but yeah, I don't think I can make something like this a social media presence a full-time job because there are no hours for social media, right? There's no 9 to 5, which means you can never tune it out ever. It has to be reactive. It has to be proactive. So you're kind of always on the call for the job, and I wouldn't want that. And in terms of making this kind of topic a living, I find it very difficult, and it would kind of kill the passion, I think. It could, or it may progress well. It may be the only way to actually focus on making the videos, but I don't see it as something that I can thrive in for years to come as a living. That doesn't seem to be working that way in my mind. And it was never my intention to begin with. Like, if you think I would build an empire in 5 years to be able to pay rent, yeah, no, I'm good. What about you?
An
Do you see
empire
yourself
of
doing something like that?
apostasy.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
what you said was kind of interesting because there is this challenge with when I think a lot of people who are working in fields or jobs where it was their passion or it is still their passion, but something changes about it when once it becomes your profession as well. It's what you said. You have to do it day in, day out, rain or shine, and it does kind of take away the spontaneity of the creative process of doing it. Like for me personally, I I tried a completely different route when I was younger, where I had my passions, my interests. I always loved writing. I always liked storytelling, whether it's movies or books or anything else really. But when it came time to go to university and pick a major, I felt like those things weren't very reliable, and some of that was influence from my parents as well, classic Middle Eastern parents in that sense of you want to take a liberal arts degree, you want to that's not very practical. And so I went into business, and long story short, that wasn't very fulfilling. So I decided, why don't I try to do something that I've always actually been interested in and not be worried about could I ever have a lucrative career doing it? Could I buy a house by the time I'm 30 if I'm, involved in writing or something? History is also another passion of mine, and Uh, I remember what my father said, that if you take history, you're going to be a history professor. Is that what you want? And it was a fair point, because no, I didn't want to be a history professor. As much as I loved history, and I still love history so much, how do you make money doing history? I mean, I guess I could make a YouTube channel. There's a lot of popular ones, so I'll have that as a backup. Anyway, so I felt I always loved writing, so why don't I try being a journalist? Because that's one way you can get paid to write. And I knew the whole, journalism is dying, print media is dying, magazines and newspapers are dying with the rise of the internet, and uh, people don't want to subscribe anymore. They just expect information to be online for free, which which had repercussions for me, my career, once I did make that shift. But what was interesting about it was something that was my passion of, I just had a great idea for a short story or a novel, or I just want to write a blog about this thing, or write about this movie I watched, whatever. It suddenly became, this is what I have to do for a living. So there's many times where I didn't want to write anything. I wasn't in the mood to write anything. But you've got your deadline. You've got to do it. You've got to just sit and stare at the blank screen and make it happen.
How do you do it if it's a creative process and it's not
How do you
just a
force it?
manual task? Like, yeah, how do you force creativity?
Well, the classic thing that all the self-help gurus will say, and not to make fun of them by calling them that, but they do sometimes have good pieces of wisdom, is that you just do it. You don't wait for the motivation and for all the conditions to just be perfect, for you to be in the perfect mindset and well rested, and you just ate and blah 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 blah. Sometimes you just have to make yourself do it. And there were many times where making myself do it meant that what I was working on was very, very bad, or I was very slow and inefficient. But if I didn't force myself to do those things, then I wouldn't have been able to do it and sustain a career. And to your question, the question that started all of this, does what I do fulfill me? It does, but not all the time. So I answered the poll question. I said sometimes. So like I mentioned, because it is a kind of a dying industry, it's hard to break in. I'm still relatively new at it. I've only been at it for a few years, and I take a lot of assignments. I do a lot of articles that don't interest me whatsoever. Um, Real estate articles being a great example. It's one of the ultimate ironies of my life that someone like me, who couldn't care less about real estate, writes about real estate all the time. And
That's how you
so,
turn your passion into a job, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So matters of practicality, you just got to do it sometimes. And
Mm.
so I work on some things that are incredibly fulfilling, and stories that are so important, things that are very impactful. And other times I write stuff that I couldn't care less about, and I force myself to
Mhm.
do. And I guess I'm lucky that I get to do things that I value some of the time. Some people aren't so lucky. Some people aren't fulfilled by their jobs whatsoever. So I am grateful for that. It's just when you're in the middle of working on something and oh my God, this is going to take 2 weeks. I couldn't care less about this. It's hard to find the motivation and willpower to do it,
Mhm.
in the moment, like the minute by minute willpower.
See, if this was a real shisha hangout, I'd be puffing on my
You'd
shisha right
puff,
now.
take a
Yeah.
long, hard puff and give
Yeah, yeah.
some words of wisdom.
Yeah, make it seem like I'm thinking about it for a bit and then say something. But you're just gonna have to pretend that I did that. Um, I got a question for you that's actually about me, so
Oh,
we'll
okay.
take that in a second. Zagros, thank you for the super chat.
Hi, Zagros.
He says, "Please accept this jizya as I humble myself and I am humiliated, O prophets, O Murtaddin." Well, without humiliation, thank you. And I suppose he's pushing me to make this my career, because it's so lucrative. Okay, jokes aside, I was going to ask you, while you were talking about how what your dad said, words of wisdom, if you study history, you're only going to be a history professor, which is obviously not true for everybody. Like, there are careers out there for that, but most of the time, a lot of
Not
these,
many.
yeah, not like, you'd have to work in a field where you're either instructing or you're doing some kind of preservation or something like that. But anyway, um, do you think I would do okay as a professor?
As a professor of what?
I don't know. But a topic that I'm interested in, a topic that I'm passionate about, I guess. I mean, on paper, I like history, but have I read enough history books? Not even close. So I don't know.
Well, it's an interesting question because I think for both of us, what's really important is that we share our ideas with other people so they can hopefully benefit from them. So in that sense, I think you have the right um, desires in terms of what you want to do to be a professor, and just seeing you do all those call-in shows, hours and hours of call-in shows with uh, people who don't communicate very well, people who are Muslims who aren't really listening to a word you're saying. I feel like you have the patience to be a professor. So I would say I could see you doing it, but it would really depend on what it is that you're teaching.
Okay, well, let me think about that for a second. I mean, I saw someone say earlier, discovering Zayd is saying discovering your niche is a struggle. Being a da'i for Islam is an easy fallback, like a dawah person. The
Yeah.
only qualification is to hear and obey. Not to say that none of them have studied it, but yeah, you don't really need that much qualification. You just need to repeat some nice sentiments, and maybe that should be like I should do Islamic studies, for example, and just ironically be a professor of Islamic studies. I mean, you don't have to be a Muslim. You don't have to believe
You
in it.
no, that's very true. Like there's a lot of universities that have comparative religion courses where it's basically taking a look at a whole bunch of religions. So I think you could possibly be interested in that. That's something I always wished I had done. I don't think I had a course like that in my university, but that's something that would definitely would have interested me as a student, and probably would interest a lot of people watching the stream right now.
Yeah, the people watching the stream, but how many of them are going to sign up? At the university where I work, and yeah, we'll see. Uh, it's a kind of in the back of my mind. Like there's a lot that I do want to read more about and study more about, but it's hard to do while I have my channel going on, while I have work. If I can just make all of those, kind of merge them into one, where I can learn and do something that I'm passionate about and earn enough money to continue doing the first two things, that would be fantastic. But I still haven't figured out that formula.
Well, the thing is, like, there's always something that has to give, right? Because there's only a certain number of hours in a week, and there's only a certain number of hours that you can devote yourself to work in a week, especially when it's something creative, which can be just as draining as physical labor.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, what I see that a lot of people who do become, if you want to just talk about specifically professional YouTubers or professional TikTokers, they just quit their day jobs. They just quit their careers and they take that plunge, that risk that, you know what, I'm going to be able to build this enough to be able to sustain myself. And I mean, for me personally, how that impacts me is, could I quit my journalism career to just do this full time, or just only talk about things that I'm passionate about instead of a lot of things that I'm not? I can't do it. Not at this point in my life. So perhaps that's something you should consider. Could you do that? Could you just quit your job?
No, especially not. I mean, quit my job for what? What am I trying to do?
Well, depending on what course you want to take, I mean, you could go this route of just focusing on building this channel, building your brand, and having all the thumbnails of you in like various
Oh
crazy
God.
expressions and emojis and all that. I
I
mean,
don't do well as a social media person. I mean, if I focus some energy
which is
into
so funny.
learning,
Which is so funny to hear you say,
why?
because you're a pretty prominent person on social media with.
I mean, relatively not that prominent. I feel like there's a lot more potential had I been more of that social media person I could have
Do you
achieved.
remember when we were talking about how many impressions each of our channels got?
That's
What
a
was
scary
yours?
number.
I
It,
don't know if you want to share it or not.
I don't remember what the number was, but it was in the millions.
It was in the
And
millions.
but all that means is that it popped up on a device and somebody scrolled by it. It doesn't mean that anybody clicked it, but it's a scary thought, to be honest. The
Yeah.
first time that I saw a million, I thought, what what the hell is that? Yeah, I was not expecting that. But it is what it is. That sometimes makes me think, "Well, do I want any of my videos to go viral? Yeah, probably not. I'm pretty happy with the following that I get. But it is, to be honest, a little bit discouraging. Sometimes I get comments that are meant to be supportive, but they would say something like, "This is fantastic. Why does it not have more views?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know why." And they say, "Well, it's such a shame. It's kind of like wasted effort." And it just, I know it's not wasted, but I have that thought in the back of my mind, like, what a waste is this if it can't pick up like the opposite side of the aisle. They can sneeze at a microphone and say Allahu Akbar, and it'll get 100,000 views. Um, so I don't think it's down the drain or anything, but when I see a comment like that, it just makes that voice in the back of my head a little bit louder. Yeah, but I ignore it.
Well, that just makes me think about how. Okay, so we talked about our careers, our jobs. When it comes to fulfillment,
It is not.
so
Don't take
today's topic
advice
is
from
career
us.
guidance.
Don't
Nope,
take advice
nope.
from us.
I went into journalism in the 21st century. Do not take career advice from me. Anyway, what I was going to say was, I think what's so interesting is that this stuff that we're doing is fulfilling, like the social media stuff is fulfilling, but in a different way. And when people give you that kind of advice that might be positive but can also be construed as negative, it's because everything is geared towards, well, you have to get attention, you have to get money, you have to basically turn it into a career. So it can't just be fulfilling on its own basis of, sure, neither of us are reaching millions of people, but we are reaching a lot of people and hopefully benefiting a lot of people by, just sharing ideas. And even if it's not, making us a lot of money and putting a roof over our heads, it's the kind of fulfillment I don't get from, me just doing my job tasks and cashing the paycheck.
I can relate to that for sure. Um,
So there shouldn't be that pressure to make it into a career, is what I'm saying. So,
no, I don't feel a pressure to make it into a career at all. I
okay.
do feel, I mean, no, that's one of those scenarios that we're discussing. Like, would you ever, can you see it happening? Not really pressure to make it into a career in any way. What I do feel pressured about, and it's self-imposed pressure, is getting more of from just from a reach point of view. Has nothing to do with money or like I said, a career, but a return on investment. The amount of time that you put into a video or into research for a video and so on, and just reminding myself that it's still helping an insane number of people. It's still reaching hundreds at least, if not more. Um, and just stop looking at that get rich quick scheme of dawah basically, and realize that you're never going to get that return on investment that way. So sometimes I struggle with that, but it's settling in my head.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like from what you said earlier that if you were to quit your day job, you're not quite sure what you would do to replace it yet. But uh, just speaking for myself, this is something I've already told you before in the past, and I think a lot of people watching would agree, some people who've been watching you for a while, that I could see you being a content creator, not necessarily just on the subject of Islam, but in so many things. And whether it's just doing documentaries or lectures or whatever, I think you could be very good at it, and I could see it being very fulfilling for you, more so than your job seems to be from what you've told me about it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I think
If
it
anyone in the
engaged.
live chat agrees with me, please
If
chime
anyone
in now.
disagrees, please let me know. That's
That too, yeah.
the voice in the back of my head telling me I shouldn't do it. Um, yeah, and I've heard jokingly or otherwise people saying I should do ASMR, and they pay 2.5%.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah,
keep the mask on because I think it adds that little bit
that
of
muted
quality.
sound.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I hope that one day I'm able to. I've spoken about this before, and I remember it was during a time, one of those times I had these realizations about what why do I live? What is the purpose of my life at the moment, right? Because that changes with time. You can't just have one purpose because now you don't believe that there's a heaven or hell and your purpose is to evade the hell and get into heaven. That doesn't work for me anymore. So it was during one of those chats that I was having with one of those Dawa people, and he was berating my point where he was asking me, "What's the purpose of life for you?" And I was saying one of the things that keep me going is helping people. And he's like, "Oh, so you're just making people happy? That's all you care about?" And I'm like, "You idiot! That's not what I said." But I didn't say that. I didn't say you idiot, but in my mind I was thinking, you idiot, that's not what I said, but let me say it better. So thanks for giving me the chance to say it better, to think about it one more time. And I realized that helping people does seem to be at the core of what is my passion in one way or another. And I'm not yet doing that much when it comes to things outside of my channel. So you were asking me earlier, how would you give back to the community or have this sense of community, or how would you do good deeds as an atheist, or what are the
Yeah, we
examples? Or
discussed that off air as maybe
yeah,
something to talk about.
yeah, and that came to mind when you asked me that today. I mean, a huge part of me giving back right now seems to be my channel, and some people would disagree, right? That this is actually helping anybody, or that this is for good reasons, or whatever. But I do see the benefit in it, and I do get that reported back to me every day. People send me messages about that, and part of it is I give to the charities that do make certain changes to help people, especially in more disadvantaged parts of the world. But beyond that, I don't have any other ways. I mean, I'd love ideas from you. What? How would you answer that?
So what's the exact question?
So what you were asking me earlier, right?
Okay,
In
so
our
if I
phone
was
call.
asking that of myself.
Yeah.
So for me, this whole process of what I'm doing uh, started from me just talking to other ex-Muslims and interviewing them about their stories and their experiences. And before that, I wasn't involved with ex-Muslims at all. I mean, I only in the sense that I was one and um, I didn't participate in Muslim things anymore. Uh, but I didn't do anything else besides that, and it kind of opened this, like it opened my eyes to, well, I have this ability to, write and share stories, share perspectives that I think maybe a lot of people can't as effectively as me, perhaps. And I'm not burdened by a lot of things that people, other ex-Muslims are burdened by. Whether it's needing to stay in hiding because of their family not approving, or I don't know, maybe they maybe have some social anxiety, whatever it is.
Security concerns.
Security concerns, whatever it is. I realize I don't have any of those things holding me back. So maybe this is the way it just clicked to me. I remember a friend of mine. I was ranting about something religion related, probably, and she said, like, "Why are you always talking about religion?"
Mhm.
And I kind of realized, well, yeah, it's like always on my mind because I mean, there's so many problems in our world today, so many things that are holding us back, and I'm going to talk about ones. I know we said we wouldn't talk too much about religion in this chat, so I'll keep this part short because there's other things I want to talk about. But it just
I have
made
an
me
anecdote
realize.
about that too,
Okay,
the whole
okay,
like religion coming up. But
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. I mean, it comes up in everything. What I realized was religion is one of the most important things in so many billions of people's lives. And because of that, because a lot of the major religions have a lot of harmful, toxic ideas and core beliefs, in my opinion, I could see just the damage it creates all over the world, all the time. I mean, I'm not going to list a whole bunch of examples. I think people watching know what I'm talking about. And I thought this is the way I can contribute. So that's why I started all this stuff. That's why I started posting my story. And what I'm doing right now is sharing other ex-Muslim stories on Twitter and Instagram on my Leaving Islam account. If you want to, Yeah, here's a plug for my stuff. So if you just look up,
From there.
if you just look up Leaving Islam on Twitter or Instagram, you'll find lots of stories from a lot of ex-Muslims from all over the world. And to be able to just put a spotlight on those people's stories is one of the most fulfilling things that I've ever done, because I feel like this is something that suppresses people. Like, people are suppressed because of this, and they feel like they have no outlets. And knowing that just posting it and thousands, hundreds, thousands of people are seeing it, and knowing that I help facilitate that is pretty rewarding. And so I devote a lot of hours of every week to doing all this stuff. And so in that sense, beyond that, I haven't done much. But what I've always had an idea for is we should have secular, atheist, whatever you want to call it, like
Churches?
non-religious. Yeah, I know church is such a church or mosque is such a stigmatized word, but like, let's say community centers
Hmm.
that people can join, pitch in, become members, and they do things like community outreach, like clothing drives, like meals on wheels, or providing entertainment. Because people, this is the argument that a lot of religious people will make, is that well, religions force you to participate in these things that you otherwise wouldn't. They turn these things into traditions that you have to follow, and in that sense, it helps you become a better person. Because, I mean, sure, it's forced, but because it's forced, it becomes part of your routine. And so there is that need, and I just think we live in a world where it's so geared towards religions doing that we don't do that if we're not particularly religious. I mean, if you
Well,
just look at one last thing I just want to say about
mhm.
this, uh, that's not necessarily true, because if you just look at the response in the West to the Ukraine-Russia crisis, there's so many people who are trying to help, who are sending money, sending clothes, sending whatever, and they're not doing it just because they're religious. So it's just kind of geared in our heads that, oh, well, you have to go to a church to do that. But if we gave people another option, one of the best examples I know of is the community center that's run by the people who do the Matt Dillahunty's channel, which I'm blanking on the name of it right now.
Is
The
it
Atheist
Atheist
Experience.
Experience or
Yeah.
something?
So they have a.
I've never watched it. Like, I've seen a couple of clips, but I've never actually watched it.
I'd recommend watching it a little bit.
Okay.
He's a pretty abrasive guy, Matt Dillahunty. It's
Yeah, I think
basically a call.
that's why I kind of turned off
Yeah, he is
from
abrasive.
watching it.
So for
Yeah.
people who don't know it, it's a call-in show where, kind of like what Aladdin does, where mostly theists are encouraged to call in, and they try to present proof for their god, and sometimes atheists call in as well for support. Anyway, this whole thing, this call-in show, which is on YouTube, runs out of a community center, and they do all sorts of activities. And I'm just thinking, why don't we have something like that in every major city? It's because we're kind of programmed as society not to, and hopefully we can change that. Is that something you would be interested in doing or participating in?
Yeah, I've got some loose plans like that I don't really I haven't formulated yet, so I don't have much to say about that. But um, what I was thinking about is a couple of things about that. First of all, people do need something, or it seems like people need some common denominator to participate in such a community.
Yeah.
And in smaller towns, maybe that's more of a thing, and there's certain like localized versions of that. But to make it um, ubiquitous enough, I suppose, or common enough, you need to have something more concrete that brings them together. I don't have
An
a solution for
excuse.
that. An
That's the
excuse,
thing.
yeah,
You need to
yeah.
give people an excuse to do it, and
And
that's the
like,
tough
it has
thing.
to not be forced, but at the same time, there has to be something that they have in common that would make them want to do this. And I don't really like. There are a lot of ideas out there, and I haven't brainstormed that. But what came to mind is, if you were to have, if a starting point would be people who were previously Muslim, for example, like an ex-Muslim community, there's logistical issues with that, right? There's security concerns as number one. And then there's this shaming aspect of it, which is, so you left Islam. Why are you still talking about it? Why is it still in your name? Like, why use the label ex-Muslim community center or something? But they don't realize that that's how you already have a bunch of people with something in common, right? And it's not necessarily that everything they do in that community has to do with Islam per se, but say they want to
It's what
have,
brought them together.
it's what brought them together, and like they have a lot of things that they're missing out on that aren't necessarily about the God part of Islam. They're about the community part of like Ramadan, for example, where they would get to have some kind of Ramadan dinner together without having that anxiety around. So, are we going to have to go pray now, or are we going to have to lie about that, or are we going to get in some discussion about religion when we don't want to? We just came here for the iftar. So without all that, there can be a community where they get to um, have a lot of the benefits of the previous community, but it's a starting point. This ex-Muslim thing that they share in common. But I don't see it working, unfortunately, just the way that things are right now. I mean, do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I think this is a criticism I've heard about what I'm doing and what other ex-Muslims are doing, is that from religious people, that what we're doing is always like this negative aspect reflecting on the religion. So even the word secular is still dependent on religion. So it's like our identity is based on us not being part of a religion, if you know what I mean. So it's still heavily dependent on religion, and we're like so focused on religion. And the argument would be, well, is that a good basis to start something to transcend religion when we're ex-Muslim or ex-Christian, or
Hmm.
like I said, the word secular? What I thought about that was, there is kind of an interesting point there, a possibly valid point of like, what can you do to bring people together besides them belonging to religion or no longer belonging to religion? Well, I was
Because like
thinking,
in one generation, there's going to be
yeah,
that problem again.
yeah. Well, what I would say is, what we're in right now is this very long, drawn out transitional phase. Um, sure, religion isn't as dominant in our societies as much as it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It's still pretty prevalent and dominant. And to transition out of it, we have to do these kinds of things to be able to start implanting in people's minds that, okay, we can have society without religion. We can have organized community activities that aren't based on this deity will kill us, will punish us all if we don't worship him.
Hmm.
I mean, or this deity saved us all, and we have to be forever grateful for this deity for saving us. Uh, we need to shift out of that mentality. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take several generations, and this is how we started. So it shouldn't be stigmatized in that sense, because this is the world we live in, and if we want to change, it's not going to completely just break free overnight. It has to happen gradually. But I'm hoping that that day will come where because there is that need, where people will just be part of all these organizations that have nothing to do with religion. Maybe they're just regional,
Hmm.
neighborhoods. Or I was mentioning soccer earlier. That's something that can unite people as well. I have a big group of friends in my neighborhood, and what unites us is soccer. We all like playing soccer. So there's people from Senegal, Colombia, Germany, all kinds of countries, Japan, Hong Kong, places from all over the world, and they're united because of soccer. And then we socialize afterwards. And those are the kinds of things that we should be looking towards to build on, instead of thinking, well, if it's not religion, then people just won't do it.
So we're back to soccer, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. Everything comes back to soccer. I've always thought about, like, it would be cool to just like wear one of my soccer jerseys. Oh, in my
On
videos.
stream. Yeah.
I'm not sure the branding departments, the marketing departments would be very happy to be associated
You
with
have a
my.
whole marketing department. Okay.
No, the marketing departments of the soccer
Okay.
teams.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have a marketing department yet.
That's very
If
Arab
anyone's
guy of
interested
you.
in the job,
Very Arab guy of you wanting to wear soccer jerseys elsewhere. That's just to anywhere but soccer. I feel like is yeah, it's not allowed. I mean, it is allowed, but I'll judge you for it. That's just me being a jokester. You said something earlier about how you were thinking that religion is. Your friend pointed out that you're always talking about religion.
Oh yeah.
So my experience is almost the opposite, where at first, when I didn't have a platform, it was on my mind a lot because I was stuck in that loop of I have a lot of thoughts. I don't know where to express them. It's not really a topic that comes up in with the kind of people that I hang out with, and the people where this is relevant to. It's not a good topic to bring up. So it's just stuck with my thoughts. But when I started expressing them on my platforms, things got a bit better, and then I'm not interested in having those discussions, or I don't bring them up in day to day life. However, some of my friends, and that's a question I'm going to ask you, I suppose. What are your? I'll get to my point of that in a second. What do your friends know you for? Like, if what is that one thing that makes
My
Alim Alim?
legend.
Yeah, I
What is my
suppose, or
legend?
like Alim. Oh, that guy, the guy who does so and so, or
What will be on my epitaph on my tombstone?
yeah.
It's an interesting question. So what do my friends know me for? Oh man, it's a very interesting question.
Be
I
introspective for a second.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess they know me for being really passionate about uh, books, movies, storytelling. Like I mentioned, like it's pretty obvious if you get to know me, I'll drop references and mention all sorts of things. Definitely philosophy as well. Just things that kind of explore what it is to be a human and like what's the most important thing to us as people is something I'm constantly interested in all sorts of different ways. I guess I mentioned to you off air that I'm a big movie buff, and I do have some movie recommendations for you that
Mhm.
I'll mention later. Um, so I'm known for being a big trivia person. So ask me a geography question, history question in particular. My pop culture knowledge isn't bad either.
I might
Uh,
quiz you on history later.
yeah, yeah, you can quiz me on history. Ask me the capital of, think of a country and ask me the capital. I'll probably know it. Um,
Bosnia.
and I'll put my hands here so I can't Google it.
Bosnia. What's the capital of Bosnia?
Sarajevo.
I have no way of verifying that, so I'll
Yeah,
take your
yeah,
word for it.
yeah. So I guess people know me for being knowledgeable about a lot of things and being pretty introspective. And yeah, I guess that's about it.
All right. Um, I was wondering what people know me for, and apparently before,
Cats,
well, yeah,
of course.
obviously, like people online know me for that and a mask. Um, so hygiene, I suppose, personal hygiene, and uh,
Yeah.
years ago, before I ever actually brought into question, is Islam true? It was just a lot of questions that I had on my mind about Islam and other things in life. And I wasn't aware of what an ex-Muslim was or anything like that. I had questions for my, as you would call them, I suppose, the chill Muslim friends of mine that I knew wouldn't turn this into some kind of argument. Um, I would ask them questions because I want to know how others around me think, because that's when I started realizing I don't know how those people think. I have presumptions about how everybody thinks about their belief. So I would ask them some questions. And years later, like now, I was hanging out with a Muslim friend of mine. He knows that I'm not Muslim anymore, and he doesn't really care. We don't really argue about religion or anything. And I don't remember. I think we were having an actual shisha, and he knows that I get more philosophical when I have a shisha. And I don't remember the sequence of events exactly, but he said something like, "Oh, no, 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 wait, don't ask me a question because last time you did, I had a lot of questions for like years to come. So let's not go there." Apparently, I asked him about predestination and free will years ago.
Ooh,
I forgot about that. I completely forgot about that. But turns out I made that guy think.
that
And
one would mess with a lot of people's minds if they really
right.
thought about it.
But I wasn't trying to mess with anyone's mind. I was asking him, like, how did you resolve that? And he was like, wait, there's something to be resolved here? Wait a second. So I guess that's what I was known for, is for a few years was asking these types of questions. And now I stay away from that topic if the other person is religious, or um, like I don't try to start things basically, but I would ask that question especially to non-religious people, or not that question, but that kind of questioning about how do you think of life? So give me, a couple of puffs of shisha, and I'm that annoying person. Some people enjoy it because they say, I've never thought about that before because no one's ever asked me that before. And some people think it's a little too heavy. So I'm like, okay, well, let's just, puff on our shishas and talk about something else like soccer. Yeah. Um, so that's what I'm known for, I suppose.
It's
And
interesting that you
yeah,
say that because it reminded me about how I think when I was younger, like so when I was still Muslim and just coming out of Islam, I think I was also known by a lot of people. So I'm hoping people always wait. Is Robert saying that about you or
you,
me?
the guy who knows about
Yes,
a lot of things.
that's actually Robert. That's actually pretty accurate. So, um, Robert asks, so your friends know you as a nerd?
Mhm.
I was known as a nerd throughout school. I had the glasses, and I was small for my not for my age, but I this will make me sound more like a nerd. I skipped a grade, so I was younger than everyone else, and so I was small, wore glasses. I was usually the best in a lot of subjects in school. Um, but yeah, like when I was a bit older and I started getting really depressed with a lot of things in life, and that's kind of what led me outside of Islam. I was known for being very cynical and pessimistic. Like I always took the a very cynical point or stance on a lot of things. And
That's funny. I wouldn't have guessed that. You don't
yeah,
seem
well,
that
I've changed. Well, that's the whole thing. I hope people have always thought of me as being nice and kind and understanding and empathetic, even when I was pretty cynical. But I did have that cynical edge. Like I always assumed the worst, almost maybe to protect myself, or to not even to protect myself, but like the whole adage of the best way to not get disappointed is to have no expectations. So I definitely had that attitude. That way, nothing could disappoint me in life because life is meaningless and uh, bad things happen all the time, and there's no point to all of it. I still think all those things, just to be clear. Life is essentially meaningless. There is no essential point to all of it, and a lot of bad things happen. But I just decided to have a more positive look at that and think, well, if that's the case, but let's make the most out of it that we can.
So, what is the purpose of your life? What gives it meaning?
It's much the same as what you just described for yourself. I think it
Mhm.
comes down to uh, trying to fulfill my own passions and desires while also giving back to the people around me and trying to make the world a better place. This whole, I don't know, experiment that human beings are doing of trying
You
to
got caught in 4K, well, 1080p, I suppose, saying you worship your desires, basically.
yeah. Well,
That's the accusation, right? That
yeah,
you worship your desires?
that's the thing. When you're a human being, you can't be, I don't think you can be wholly altruistic and selfless all the time. We're just not geared that way. Anyone who claims to, I think, is lying or trying to serve themselves in some other way. We have to do something for ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves and our needs to be able to help others. So that's the way I kind of do it, where expressing myself creatively through storytelling in all sorts of ways is how I find my life to be fulfilling, how I fulfill myself. And but what fuels it is my desire to try and make the world a better place. So by that I mean we have a lot of problems. We talked about religion. I want to talk about a few other things in a second, but just to answer your question, it really is just try to help improve people's lives. So some people do it through literal donations. Obviously, the way I've chosen to do it is to try and share different ideas, new perspectives in people's minds. I think that's one of the most powerful things actually about media when we consume it, if it's a book or a movie or a show, is it gives us a glance into another person's perspective, another person's life. It it, it helps us empathize with others and learn more about ourselves, because it
Mhm.
always does come back to ourselves in a certain kind of way, where you see someone, like, let's just talk about like a show like Breaking Bad, for example, very popular show about a person doing terrible things. But when you watch that and you see things from their perspective and how they got sunk into it, and his issues with his son, his issues with his wife and his brother-in-law, there's things to take from that in our own lives. of how do we find fulfillment? How do we face the challenges in our lives? How do we balance between taking care of ourselves and finding meaning in our lives
Mhm.
with doing the necessities that we have to do while also juggling the whole shitty world we're living in? The world is shitty in many ways.
Well, it's funny because as you're talking, I keep thinking about these Dawa zingers, like, worshiping your own desires and um, uh, worshiping your own ego and things like that from Islam, right? That vilify what you just said. And hearing you say it, I mean, I've thought about it before. It's just mischaracterizing what you're saying. Like these things that summarizing it as, for example, worshiping your ego, and the negative connotation being that you care about yourself more than anybody else. You think that you're the center of the universe and you think that you're better than God, right? But in reality, you're just listening to how you think, right? You are who you perceive yourself to be in a way, right? That's your reality around you is what your senses take in and what your mind processes them to mean. So it makes sense that you would be at the center of your universe. Obviously, that doesn't mean that you should act selfishly, or that you should only take everything that you desire, that you want to do, and just at the expense of your own well-being, at the expense of everybody else. But there is nothing wrong with, for example, chasing your desires, as long as these desires are healthy for you long term, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. And as you said it, it's like a stepping stone to being taking care of yourself so you can do better for other people as well.
Well, what the
Uh,
desire is also important too, I think. If your
yeah.
desire is, I'm just going to make all the money and have all the money and all the gold just so I can all have it, then
It's a
that's,
complicated formula, or equation of, so what is happiness for a person? I mean, when I try to think about it, it's the chemical that you feel, that chemical reaction. A biologist can correct me. It's however the neurons fire in your brain, whatever hormones prevent the reuptake of that serotonin, whatever it may be. That is how you perceive these feelings. Now, you can take a shortcut and do something that gives you that dopamine or whatever it may be consistently, but more often than not, you'll find that it's not sustainable. It's almost like there's a biological mechanism that stops you from doing that, or it doesn't reward you increasing this kind of behavior, right? Because eventually you're going to grow resistant to it. You're going to want to find things that are more fulfilling, that gives you more happiness than just a constant dopamine stream. So when you think about something like a lot of money, you think, okay, that's a lot of, for that person, it's a lot of dopamine. So what's objectively wrong with that? Well, it's coming at the expense of hoarding it from other people. So that's a negative. It's coming at the expense of stress for them. So even if you break down everything down to your senses um, and the effect that it has on others and yourself, I think you can have a pretty good guide for what to do and what not to do. That's kind of my compass right now. Uh, yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
well, I just wanted to make the point that the Dao boys or whoever, the religious people who make this argument, oh, you're just chasing your own ego, your own desires, they're not exempt from that. People who seek religions, let's not talk about people who are born into them. Let's say people who seek religions, for example. What are they looking for? They're feeling adrift in life. They feel like they don't have a guide, they don't have a purpose, and it is their desires, what their ego wants, that takes them to a religion. And it is the things that this religion offers them that fulfills their desires and their ego. So my feeling on this kind of thing is that pretty much everything we do is driven by our desires. So even helping other people is driven by our desires. Um, Worshipping God is driven by our desires because we want to get into God's good graces. We want to feel like we're doing the right thing so that we feel better about ourselves. With that being said, I think the thing that religions tap into, especially when we talk about the whole notion of the oneness of everything, or the oneness of God, and to some they would say the oneness of the universe, if they don't want to specify a god, is this desire to escape this feeling of always having to chase your desires and your ego and getting that next dopamine rush. So I think that's the thing that religious people are also kind of talking about, where you just kind of let go of all of that and you just give yourself to, you know what, I'm just this one speck in this massive universe that's the glory of God or the glory of
Are you talking about
existence.
like nirvana, like enlightenment of some sort?
Yeah, that's how it's also defined as well for some people. Uh, People want to kind of escape that because they realize that it's limiting to just always be chasing your own desires, especially in this day and age where materialism is so important in so many ways. But I'd say to what I'd say to that is this is something that that you can get without religion. If you want to escape the being trapped by your own desires and all that, well, like desiring, first of all, is a thing that is just inevitable part of being a human being. But to not be beholden to it is a bit of a different thing. Not to not be beholden to it all the time. So whether it's things like, I think meditation is very effective for a lot of people. I don't practice meditation myself, but I know a lot of people who do, and it is something I do want to do more of. It just gives us a little break from that, and it teaches us that the things that we're desiring in life are often not as important as we think they are, and they're just those things, desires. And one of the best ways to escape that or to not be limited by it is to desire things for the benefit of everyone. So not just yourself. But we can't forget that those things still are desires.
So we're just ruled by desires, all of us.
We are. We are.
I have a couple questions.
Inevitably.
Inevitably? You think we have no free will in having desires?
No, I mean, like how I would say it is, if we stopped desiring things, we would cease to be human. We would probably cease to be alive. I mean, beyond just like things that we want to do, like desiring food, desiring shelter.
There's a few comments a few questions from some comments, but first I was brushing through and I saw this one. Why are you competing with Harris and Noria? Are we competing with Harris and
Who's
Noria?
competing?
I don't know. You and I guess.
I collaborate with Nuria on a bunch of things. We're not competing. We're trying
Okay.
to help each other.
I've never spoken to them. Are they talking about like us having a 2-person format kind of live stream? Is that it?
Or maybe, well, they do something on Sundays together. So are they doing it at the exact same time that we're doing this?
Interesting.
If that's the case, it's not intentional.
Yeah. So Zagros was asking, any of you vegan? No, not me. What about you?
No, I dabbled in vegetarianism and pescatarianism.
How's pescatarianism?
How was it?
Yeah. That's
It
when you can
was
eat fish, right? And
yeah. You can eat fish, but no meat, no dairy. It was doable. It was manageable. I definitely got sick of seafood. I did miss meat a lot. It kind of started just as a challenge to myself to see if I could do it. So in that sense, the whole, you know, animal suffering thing was a secondary reason. It was more of like the person. I'm being completely honest here. It was more to see if I could do it. And I did it for like 3 years, and then the first time I had meat again, I still remember exactly what it was. It was a supermarket fried chicken. So it wasn't even like from like a gourmet chicken place. It was this supermarket fried chicken, like one of those ready-made meals. It's pretty
you were
good
that desperate?
No, I just was in the supermarket and I was, you know what?
Okay.
This is the day. This is the day. And so I bit into it, and it was one of the most wonderful experiences of my life. I'm not even exaggerating. The taste, the explosion of flavor in my mouth, all the taste buds, like they seem like they had been dormant and they just came alive. I hope this doesn't make anyone who's vegan like run to their nearest KFC or something.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good question though, like the whole vegan aspect. Do you want to get into that at all? Like
I
from
mean,
your
I
own perspective?
just a brief comment from me. And I've said this before. I want to be at some point vegan, but I don't think I could do the all or nothing approach at the moment. So I'm just gradually shifting away from it. I'm eating more tofu. I'm like first I was going to be vegetarian or pescatarian, but it's still gradual as well because it takes more energy and effort to get things tasting good enough to get me to eat them, you know? So I don't want to be malnourished. So that's a hurdle of mine. And weirdly enough, I was criticized for this by someone who is obsessed with my videos. He was like, "You're virtue signaling veganism, but you're not a vegan." I'm like, "No, I never said I was a vegan, but I want to be." Yeah, that's all I have about that.
My personal feeling is that the way the way animals are treated, the animals we eat, like the factory farming problem around the world is horrifying. The amount of suffering that's inflicted on so many animals constantly is incredible. And when we buy meat, we are all culpable in that. But to say the solution then is that none of us should eat meat whatsoever is an extreme option, in my opinion, in terms of everyone doing it. If someone wants to do that and is happy to do that, please
I don't think
go ahead.
anyone's calling for like everyone being vegan.
I mean, I'm saying for the people who do, there are people who do. There
Mhm.
are. Um, I think we all definitely should be eating less meat, not even just for the selfless reason of caring for the animals, but for our own sake, if we want to be selfish in terms of the climate impact of cows in particular is incredible. And I think I've read studies saying that one of the most effective also dairy products, but
Yeah.
um, one of the most effective things we can do to reduce our carbon footprint is to eat less meat as individuals. And so I'm all supported for being flexitarian, as Zaid says, to eat less meat, eat more plants, more vegetables. It's probably better for you. I think it actually is better for you, not even probably. So that's kind of what I try to do in my life. I try to limit how much meat I eat. And at the same time, the solution of, having no animals whatsoever for human consumption, this is the way this is the way the world is, and we are like we eat meat. Like, I don't think that in of itself is a bad thing, if that makes sense.
Being you're
Being a
talking about
carnivore.
as a human species being a
Yeah.
carnivore or an
It's
omnivore, I guess, right?
yeah. It's just the way we've done it has taken it to a horrifying level.
Yeah.
And we should be more responsible about how we treat our animals, because we just understand so much better about what they go through. And so that's what I would say. We should all eat less meat, and if someone wants to become vegan, um, they should do their homework too. There's a lot of supplements, maybe not a lot. There's several supplements that you should take to supplement your diet. I
Mhm.
think vitamin B12 is the one that we get from meat. I could be
See,
wrong
that's the
about
thing.
that.
You've already lost me because like if I've got to put more steps
Well,
into
it's
it,
not easy.
yeah,
But I'm not
it's
that. But that's not an excuse for the individual, I would say.
mhm.
Uh, but if we want to just talk about, like, let's say, like, policy decisions of, like, let's make everyone vegan by government decree,
No,
it's going to
that's
be
not gonna work.
no. And vegans aren't saying that. I'm just saying
Mhm.
hypothetically, like, it's going to be hard to get everyone to adopt it because it's completely changing our lifestyle. Not saying that that's the reason. It's not because something is hard, but I think a practical solution that will lead to positive effects is for all of us to just limit our meat intake.
Agreed. We've got a few more comments that we can answer, I suppose. What are your thoughts on robots slash AI becoming conscious in the future? Good question, Paul Jake.
Um, do you know anything about this? I mean, I saw iRobot.
That's not even
I,
a documentary. Come on.
no, I know. I mean, I
Yeah.
have read a little bit about that. It seems like there's two schools of thought, where some say that it is inevitable that it's going to happen, uh, and others say that there's something intrinsic about our consciousness or our essence or whatever you want to call it, our brain, how it works, that means that it will never quite happen. Like they'll never be self-aware in the way that we're thinking that we're self-aware. But they could become, or they will likely become, super intelligent. My personal feeling is I don't know. Like I really don't know. It would be, I think, scary if that happened.
Yeah. I
It would mean a lot of repercussions for us as human beings, because there is that whole argument: what if self-conscious robots are the next step of evolution in mankind? And that's something that was explored in the Johnny Depp movie Transcendence, which I would not recommend. But if you
okay.
want something to explore, that's something that explores that topic, then I'd recommend that movie.
Well, here are my thoughts. Not that I know that much about the topic in terms of technical knowledge, but
Same.
this is one thing that scares me about that idea. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to achieve some kind of sentience or consciousness through AI, but we might get very close, at least to the point that we don't know what to expect from that AI. So AI, meaning artificial intelligence, can be as simple as artificial intelligence in doing one specific task or handling one kind of thing, right? It doesn't necessarily mean a whole brain simulated. But if we simulate, and I guess humans are getting closer and closer to that every day, to be able to teach a machine, for example, have it go through the same exact experiences as one person, right, throughout their lifetime, like have it be like a 70-year long experiment. It's just learning every single thing and their thoughts about it, or whatever thoughts or actions it can observe from that person. And then after that person dies, there's almost like a trained model to what is it like to be that John, that John Doe. That would be scary because you don't know exactly how that thing thinks. It would be almost unpredictable to an extent.
What would
Um,
be its desires? What would be its objectives?
well, that's
Like,
the
would it
thing. If
necessarily be the things that we program into it?
But the whole thing about machine learning and artificial intelligence is you're not programming hard coding specific instructions and things like that. You want it to figure it out and come up with something new. That's the point of the intelligence. So what does it come up with? We don't know. And if it's truly free, right? If it has some kind of free will, then it may not even answer your questions when you ask it what it's thinking. Right? It's like you're dealing with a human. Is it humane to keep it in custody, and ask it a bunch of questions all day long to study it? There's a lot of issues there, but I think it's going to be scary when at a point we're not even sure what it's thinking, or we're not sure what the next thought would be. And yeah, it's kind of a scary idea, especially if we integrate it without enough fail safes in any kind of critical system. I don't think robots are going to take over the world or anything, but I can imagine one getting in some kind of depressed loop or something, or making a wrong decision.
Well, that's the thing. Like, would such a thing feel our emotions, like happiness, sadness? Would it
If we teach
have?
it how.
Well, that's the thing. Would we be teaching these things? Like, would we be putting in like morality chips in robots to teach them? Do you know the whole classic thing? I'm sure there's been movies that have explored this, but if you created a robot, a sentient robot, to solve the problem of human suffering, to eliminate human suffering, what if that robot solution is to just kill all human beings? Because then there would be zero
Technically
suffering,
correct. Yeah,
because there's
technically
zero
correct.
human beings. So that's I guess, the unpredictable side of it that you're talking about. Even if it did have our object, even if it was programmed to do certain things and we had certain fail safes, who knows what they're going to come up with?
Yeah. To Mr. Spencer is correcting us here. Yeah,
Eh,
robots and AI are not interchangeable, but yes,
sure, sure, sure.
yeah. And usually when AI is trained, it's trained for specific things. It's not really trained for everything. You don't teach the same computer how to understand emotions and also teach it how to. So I don't think this is a realistic thing to worry about, but I'm just thinking in a vacuum how scary it would be to actually have something close enough to consciousness. Like, how do you know that you've arrived there? there's going to be a gray area of like this uncanny valley before you get to confirming that that's a conscious AI, that it's
Mhm.
just not conscious enough that you're scared of it. Like you don't know if there's some kind of emotion you can appeal to or anything. Yeah, it's a topic way out of my depth. Let's just leave it at that.
Did you ever watch Westworld, the HBO show?
No, but I've heard that it's related to these topics.
I
So
I I would highly like. This is my first recommendation, Westworld. If it's something that you'd consider watching, maybe I won't tell you this because it is a spoiler.
yeah, don't spoil it for me
Okay,
and everyone else here.
okay, I won't
Yeah.
spoil it, but it does have a very interesting exploration of what it is to be human and what would separate us from AI, and it explores how would AI become sentient, self-aware, and it's an interesting exploration of that.
All right, I'll
So
check
that's
it
the
out.
first recommendation.
Yeah, I'll write it down. A question from Jack Knife. Oh, what books are you guys reading right now? You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'm always caught between two modes of either I want to read creative fiction, like a novel or whatever, or I want to read something that's more nonfiction, like more philosophical or history or whatever. Right now, I'm in a nonfiction mode. So I'm reading two nonfiction books. So one of them is by Karen Armstrong, who's a historian who focuses a lot on religion. She's written books about, I think she's written multiple books about Islam, actually. And I think I've talked about her before in one of our streams, Aladdin. So she is kind of an apologist. I believe she is religious, but more of the all religions are valid attempts to explore the divine kind of religious person.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, I
the
think I
books,
have her book, A
which book?
History of God.
I do believe that's one of her books. I haven't read that one. I've
I'm
read
just in the
several of her
beginning of
books.
reading that one. Yeah.
I do recommend her, but you have to take what she says with a grain of salt because you can see that her ulterior motive is, while she wants to share information about religion, she also wants to defend them.
Mm-hmm.
So she's one of those people who are, well, it's not the religion's fault that all it's just people kind of
Islam is
stuff.
perfect. Humans are not.
I don't know if she'd say that, but she's definitely defended religion, Islam specifically, saying that it's not violent or as violent as what it's accused of being. Anyway, so the book I'm reading is called Fields of Blood. What a riveting title. Karen is loved by Muslims, yes, Coco Jasmine, because she defends Islam. So the book Fields of Blood just explores the history of religious wars and how religion kind of played into that. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. I would recommend it to you, Aladdin. The other book I'm reading is a book by Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek. I probably butchered the pronunciation of that name.
Okay.
He's someone I think I recommended to you as well. I recommended his documentaries to you.
You did, yes.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard of Zizek, he's a pretty well-known public speaker, psychologist, professor kind of person, philosopher, and he has a very unconventional, interesting look on a lot of things. And one of the books he wrote that I'm reading right now, I actually can't remember the title of it. I never really pay attention to the titles of his books because they're all kind of just stream of consciousness. So I'm just going to look it up. But in the meantime, can you share yours?
Yeah. What books am I reading right now?
Yeah.
So the way that I read is very disjointed, and I just keep switching between books. So it makes it difficult if I'm reading a book that I need to keep up with the story, or it's something very like I got to really be into it and learning from it, not just some kind of fiction. So at the moment, I'm in the beginning of reading this book, A History of God, by Karen Armstrong. I'm just done reading in this month. I'm very proud of myself for getting through two short novels, if they can be called novels, I guess. The what was it called? Now I forgot what it's called. The A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's a very fun, like sci-fi kind of
I
read.
saw the movie.
Oh, I haven't yet, but I'm pretty sure the book would be better. I think
I didn't think the movie was that great, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. I'm one of those snobs who thinks a book is probably going to be better because you're
It's
thinking about all the
usually
details.
true.
Yeah. I read the second one in that series, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, and now I'm reading the third one, which is Life, the Universe, and Everything.
Have you not read the first one?
No, I have.
Oh, sorry, I missed that part.
Yeah, the first and the
I was
second
gonna
one.
say it because you mentioned the second one. I was like, what? You started
Yeah,
with the
no,
second one?
I did read the first one. What else? I'm reading this, or just beginning this book called اللص والكلاب, like the thief and the dogs by, I think it's Najib Mahfouz. But I haven't been reading Arabic books in a while, so I want to get back into that. And lastly, this book called You're the Jury, which, as it implies, you're the jury and you get to decide on a case. And then you see what the actual ruling was. So it's a bunch of
That's kind
cases,
of interesting.
right? It's like watching a crime kind of docuseries or documentary, except you're the one
So you
sitting
kind of
in.
just decide, and does
Yeah,
it share also what the judgment actually ended up being?
yeah. So you
Okay.
can assess your assessment versus the actual jury.
Have you finished a case yet?
Yeah, yeah. There's multiple of them, and they're not that long, so like several pages each. So
Do you
yeah,
find yourself that you're generally speaking getting the, well, not right answer, but the answer that the actual jury came to?
yeah, either correct or close. But the problem is there's like the technical distinctions between first degree, second degree, and so on, and that kind of stuff. I don't always remember unless I revise. So sometimes I cheat a little bit. I'm like, okay, guilty or not guilty, and the rest is all technicalities. Um, yeah. So those are some books. I've got some stuff here and there that I've ditched in the middle of reading, but that's what's going on right now for me.
Same, yeah. I used to never do that. I used to have this attitude of once I start reading a book, I gotta finish it.
Mhm.
Mark shares the meaning of life there, I believe.
Yeah. How did you
42.
know that?
I saw the movie.
Oh yeah, you saw the movie. That's right. No spoilers.
No spoilers, yeah. Um, so anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so the I used to just read a book even if I hated it. I just wanted to get it finished. And then I came across, I think it was Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged, which is a very famous, controversial book. If you want to talk about like the dangers of people just following their own desires, that's a classic example of how that's been vaunted as a positive thing by Ayn Rand and her philosophy. But maybe we'll talk about that in another video. Anyway, I got 100 pages in or something like that, and I gave up. It was just too much. It was one of the weirdest, most pretentious books I've ever read. But the book I am reading now by the Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek is called A Left That Dares to Speak Its Name, 34 Untimely Interventions. So speaking for myself, I guess if you had to categorize me, I would say I'm a progressive leftist. I'm not communist or Marxist or anything. Zizek, I think, identifies as Marxist or communist, one of those. And it's an interesting exploration of a lot of the problems that we see in the world. And I think what Zizek does very well is he doesn't focus on the surface level stuff that seem to be the problem. He kind of sees those things as symptoms of greater overarching problems in the world, in our system. And one of the main things of that is just the kind of contradictory nature of capitalism, self-destructive nature of capitalism, which is something I wanted to discuss as well, if you remember.
You wanted to talk about capitalism, and
A little bit, yeah.
I
Unless
told
there's
you I
more
have like
questions.
no political science background, so I have nothing to say really about all of that except, yeah, capitalism kind of sucks, man. That generic capitalism rant. Uh, there are some more questions if you
Okay, let's
still
hear
want to
them.
take those.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, so Zagros says you might want to add to that list a hunter-gatherer's guide to the 21st century. Okay, add it to the list, I
Sure.
suppose.
I
The
don't know that
list
one.
is right now like 90 plus books long. Not that I read that much, it's just that I don't get to what I want to read. But
You'll get to them by the time you're like 50 or something.
yeah, that's my retirement plan right there. The amount of books that I want to read. Let's see, what are the other questions we were getting. So, what are you guys going to do this Ramadan? What are you going to do?
I have to admit, I don't even know when Ramadan is. Is it coming up?
Yeah.
This shows like I'm so detached from the Muslim world at this point.
Yeah.
It's so
So
weird because it moves. Like when I was growing up, it was in the winter. It would be like in November, December, and then I guess it kind of just gradually shifted towards the summer.
yeah. So nothing
Nothing,
in particular.
nothing.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize Ramadan was coming up.
Yeah. In my case, I sometimes I'm even reminded by non-Muslims before I remember, because I don't again, because our calendars are around the, what was that calendar called? Like the January to December calendar, not the Hijri, the
Gregorian.
Gregorian. Yeah, I can never pronounce that word. Yeah, the Gregorian calendar. So kind of evades my mind. Um, so for me, not much really. Like I might get something or another, some sentimental like dinner or dessert item from Ramadan days. Uh, but other than that, I don't really have anything in particular planned for Ramadan. And
You're not gonna send people Ramadan Eid Mubarak GIF
oh, like on
or
WhatsApp and
meme.
WhatsApp groups. Well, that's of
I
course, yeah,
I get them from family members who aren't even religious. So
yeah. It's that community thing you were
yeah,
talking about
yeah.
earlier. Yeah. No, I'm pretty open about not fasting. And weird enough, just a few years ago, like 3 years ago or something, I'd feel a little bit of embarrassment if I'm in public and there's like a Muslim person and I'm eating or something. But um, like now, I have none of that shame. If anything, I feel bad for the people who do feel shame in that kind of thing, because we've just been conditioned to feel that. Yeah, I don't like rub it in people's faces or anything, but I don't operate as if Ramadan is happening. I feel like part of the challenge is people are going to have to resist eating even if other people are eating. And I feel bad for those who live in Muslim majority countries or areas where they have to adhere to the rules of like not opening, for example, not opening a restaurant during fasting times or all that kind of stuff. I think the regular rules should apply to everybody, but I guess who makes the rules except the people
In
in
power.
charge? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed.
What else? Have you guys played Fallout 4? The story handles the subject very well. Oh, I think it was about AI and stuff.
Oh, I have not. I played Fallout 3, I think, randomly. I'm not a big video game person, but I did play that one.
Yeah, I'm not a video game person either. So no, I did not play that. But on my, imaginary list of video games that I would play before I retire or something. Yeah, so that's a lot of the questions that I had from the comments. Um, was there anything that I interrupted you on? You said you were going to talk about capitalism, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the thing that kind of instigated it's, I mean, it's something that I always think about often, actually, and it does tie into what we're talking about in the beginning, just about do our careers fulfill us? Uh, I was having a conversation with a close friend of mine, and we were just talking about, what kind of job he should be trying to get. He's not working right now, and what kind of career he might get into. We discussed a whole bunch of options, and he mentioned that one thing he might do is uh, join this, get a factory job at um, a car manufacturer, and he was saying how it was very long hours and very repetitive, but the benefits are great and the salary's pretty good. But he was thinking that he'd probably be very miserable doing it, but maybe he'll just do it for a year. And it just made me think about how much of our lives are just dictated by the necessity of making money. So sure, we talk about, like, I want to be fulfilled, I want to express who I am in all my wonderful awesomeness, but when it comes down to it, what we all need is money. Like, that's something. The only people who don't care about money are the ones who just have a lot of money. If you don't have money, you're either, I'm sorry, if you're not worried about money, you're either like super rich, or you're like one of those tribes that live undiscovered in the Amazon, and money just isn't a concept for you. Everyone else, you're kind of trapped in this world of needing to get money. It defines so much of what we do. Uh, exactly from Mr. Spencer. You mean the necessity of collect enough of X to transact for Y. Yeah, we need money to get things. Like that's the way the world works. And the way it also works is you have to spend a whole bunch of your time doing labor to get the money. And I think that's actually one of the reasons, to tie it to religion again, one of the reasons why religion is still such a force and why a lot of people do convert to religions is because it's the fixation of our lives, like money. And I think it creates so much suffering and misery when you just have people, going to, whoever's going to school and uh, being, and then spending money to go into a certain profession or a trade that they don't care about because they have to. There's a lot of they have to. You have to go to school so you can get a good job. You have to go to university so you can get a good job. I'm not disparaging those things. I'm grateful to have those things because
Well, why are
and
you reminding me of the miseries of life, man? What's the upside here?
well, I think it's important to know these things so that we can kind of then escape them or to change them. We need money. Secular Spirits 2022.
Yeah, please quote that
Yeah.
out of context, right? Two ex-Muslims saying we need money.
We all need money.
Yeah.
I would ask POTS 995 to amend that slightly.
Yeah.
So religion kind of sneaks its way in because it offers people another thing to get them fulfillment so they can escape just that chase for money, doing the long hours every day of doing a job that they don't care about. And it's something that's explored in so many different movies and different books. One of the best examples I can think of is like Fight Club, which have you seen that movie?
I know what it is, but I haven't seen it now.
So Fight Club is an interesting movie because
Are you allowed to talk about it though?
yeah, well done, well done. You know enough to know that.
Yeah.
So that movie is an interesting exploration of it because I'm not going to give away spoilers really of this. I'm just giving away like a little bit of the plot. So the main character is someone who's just doing this boring office job that he doesn't care about. He's kind of a zombie in his life. He has insomnia. He doesn't care about anything. He just goes through day in day out without really, wanting to do anything that he's doing. And long story short, his apartment gets destroyed, and he ends up getting involved in he ends up creating this club for men to just fight. It's as simple as that. And it becomes something completely different and expands beyond that. But what it's exploring is that there's all these people who aren't fulfilled by the materialistic chase of their lives. They're not getting any meaning from it, but it's all they're doing. And this is a classic thing that maybe you can relate to, Aladdin, is if you're working hard, like a hard job and like long hours, when you're finally done, you're probably too tired to do anything else. Like maybe you'll just go home and zone out, watch TV, and go to bed, and then start the whole thing all over again. And by the time you get to the weekend, you're also a zombie. You just want to just do nothing to recover. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. Where a lot of people, I think, they also drink, they abuse alcohol, or get hammered, or whatever you want to call it, because they just want like a momentary escape from that day-to-day drudgery. And it's a problem, I think, that is the key problem in life. I would say religion is offered as a solution and it gets a lot of power because the key problem is we're not leading fulfilling lives. We're for the most part wage slaves. We're just dependent on these slaves. With these wages that make us slaves, that chain us. And we're taught that we're supposed to just be making more and more money to get more and more things. We need the car, we need the house, or else we're not going to get the other good things like a wife who loves us. If we're
Well, where's
talking
the
about
but? I'm waiting for the but here.
the the but is what we do. Like the but is what we do to change it,
Mm-hmm.
but that is not the best way to live our lives, and we need to change it. There's no escaping this reality. Like I said, like the only people who escape it are the ones who have so much money, or they're, I don't know, hermits who live in the forest or something. And it's a tough question because I don't know what the answer is. Like clearly the answer is we need a new system. We need something where we don't have to all just slave away doing things we don't like to do. Some solutions that I've seen presented are things, like have you ever heard of universal basic income?
Yeah.
So the idea of having a universal income is you would get money to cover the basic necessities of life, and it would vary depending on what area you live in. Like if you live in a major expensive city, you get more compared to like if you live in a rural area. But the essential idea is if you have all of your essential needs covered, you have freedom to a quote out of context. I'm waiting for the but here. Always waiting for the but.
The booty. Okay.
So what do you think of that idea after my long
Universal basic income. Well, I don't know enough about it to, give an accurate commentary. I
Well, just
do.
like thinking about like the
Mhm.
basic concept of the idea. What if well, let's look at your life. Let's say you're going to get the money you need to cover your rent, cover your food, cover other basic necessities, bills and stuff. Uh that's guaranteed. You're getting that
Mhm.
money in your bank account every month. You don't have to work for it. You just get it. Like how would that change your life?
Um, here's the problem with that question, though. When I'm thinking about universal basic income, I'm thinking about universal basic for everybody, not just for me. So for me, I feel like it
Yeah, let's
would.
just talk about for you
Yeah.
first and then we'll
Okay.
expand.
For me, I feel like that would benefit my life a lot because that would give me room to focus on the things that I'm passionate about and not worry about how do I make a living off of this. Uh, like for example, I'd be making a lot more videos, and I wouldn't even be worried about getting paid for the videos at all because if I have my needs covered, this is just a passion project, which is the way that it is right now. But with also more time and less stress of the rest of my work day and life and so on. And yeah, so that's how it would work for me. But as a universal thing, I would have to contribute, right? Everybody has to contribute and to make sure that there's enough capital for this kind of system. And there is, if we don't let people hoard them, at the top. But there are a lot of people who this wouldn't work for. They would just benefit off of it and not really do anything productive back for the society. But one could argue that there are more than enough resources in just given off by the land that if we set up systems we're benefiting from those resources for everybody without expecting that much back, right? Society can survive without expecting more value put back in, except by the people who want to put in value, the people who want to work extra, and we can still function that way. But unfortunately, greed is a component of all humans, and we're not going to want to pay for other people to just live life aimlessly while we work, right? So I don't know if that's ever going to work. What do you think about that?
I agree with what you said. Like there is um I think something about universal income that we don't like because of how our psychology works. So in two different areas. So would that just make people be less incentivized to work because they're just getting this money? Well, like to that I would say that I think that is going to be true for a lot of people, but it depends on how much money you give people. Like I mean, if you're giving people just like the basic amount of money to cover their needs, that's different than giving them all the money they could ever possibly want. Like you wouldn't be able to buy a house, for example, not in Toronto anyway, um, where I live, for that amount of money. But you wouldn't be chained to the things that you feel like you have to do right now. If you're someone who's a minimum wage worker, maybe you don't have the best education, but you're forcing yourself to work at this terrible job. So I think while it will have that effect for some people, it could be very freeing for a lot of other people. But the other point is the way we work also psychologically is we're driven to compete. We're driven by our desire to um, reach this goal of, let's say, more money. In the case of our world today, if you take away the urge or the need to get that, then perhaps people will be less incentivized to create things, to start businesses, to become entrepreneurs. They'll be like, you know what, I'll just chill. I'll just chill. So those are valid points. So I think it comes down to how do we implement this. Overall, I don't think it's a bad idea because the world is going there anyway. There's more and more people that are probably going to lose their jobs because of automation, because of AI. Like things like self-driving cars are coming. You can already see it. Like if you go to in Canada, if you go to supermarkets, the checkout lines, they're self-serve now. They're just done for these machines, so they don't need to have as many
But
staff
that
members doing it.
worries
So
me
we're
though.
seeing it happen.
That worries me because the way that this is implemented now, that difference, like people are out of a job and the money is still going to the top, right? So it's not like instead of the time wasted working that job, someone has universal basic income and they can do something better. It's that person is out of a job and the economy is still kind of difficult for them to survive in, and Jeff Bezos has more money. Like that's how it's working right now. So how do we put an end to this and implement some level of universal basic income while also taking money from that hoarded money, right? That's not going to happen.
Well, the solution for that, I'm not saying I have like a perfect solution that's going to happen tomorrow, but to me, it seems like clearly the solution is that when we have a society that we look at today, like overall, there's this balance between private interests and the government. So what we need is to have governments that are not as beholden to corporations, governments that are actually there to serve the best interests of people, not politicians who are just running for their own sake or to help out their corporate friends and then get rich, fat paychecks with a corporation after they're done serving their term. So we need those governments to come in, and whether it's increasing the taxes on companies. I think there's a famous example of, I think it was Amazon that apparently didn't pay any income tax in the US. Someone can correct me if I'm mistaken about that. But basically, corporations are finding all these ways to avoid paying tax. And that needs to change. We need to have a society that isn't just built on benefiting the top 1%. How do we do that when the 1% is infiltrating all our governments and controlling, or sorry, influencing policy? That I don't know. One thing I do know is if we keep voting for the same parties and governments that have been doing the same thing before, then it's just going to keep happening.
You guys can vote? Wow, that must be great. Yeah, I try not to burden myself with so much on my mind. Like at first, I used to think I was going to take that route of anti-capitalist youth, and not to mock them for it. I if I thought about it longer, I'd be a lot more anti-capitalist. I would be more vocal and active about it. I just don't have the emotional capacity to worry about so many different causes at the same time.
No,
So
that's a totally
yeah,
valid point. And so to the thing that you said, where's the but to what I'm saying?
I should
Well,
write a book. It's kind of like a pop culture kind of anti-capitalist book. Where's the butt? Yeah, there you go. That's my retirement scheme.
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, the problem of capitalism and how it is inherently self-destructive. Like, I mean, the recession that we had, like the major recession that we had 12 years ago, is a great example of the 2007 2008 recession. Um, that is inevitable, unavoidable with the way capitalism works because it's driven by profit, it's driven by greed. That's just inbuilt into the system, ingrained into the system. So when we see people losing their jobs for the sake of automated, like let's say a truck driver loses his job to a self-driving truck, uh, that's driven by the need to increase profits by decreasing labor costs. That is inevitable. So on the one hand, we need a solution for people who are going to lose their jobs because our world is dictated by money and by the need to do a job to make money. That needs to change because it's going to lead to a lot of suffering because a lot of people won't be able to get jobs in the future. And uh, it, the thing that's so challenging about it is we can't possibly conceive of a world without capitalism. That's why it's so difficult to even talk about a but. What is we can talk about a world without religion even maybe. can we talk about a world where it's not run by money?
That's the real blasphemy.
That's the real blasphemy. Like, what? How would you even start that? Like, how would we even get to this point? But at the same time, it's the thing that's causing so much of the suffering in the world. Yes, I will agree with the people who say, well, when you look at capitalism, it's improved the standard of living for so many people all over the world. But it has so many inbuilt harms that it's like, is it overall, like, is it the only thing we can do? Even discussing, like, what can we do to replace it? Like, if you talk about communism, I'm not saying I support communism. It's laughed off, or they'll just say, look at China, look at communist Russia with Stalin. And so it seems like there's no solution. So the answer seems to be, let's just keep going, even though we know it's causing us all of this suffering.
So, for someone to want to go through the trouble of finding a solution and trying to implement it and so on, they have to have a purpose that's bigger than just them surviving it, right? So, what is going to drive them to
Yes.
do that? And here's where somewhere where religion doesn't help, because in the idea of if you're in a religion that has an afterlife or any sort of like divine intervention, karma kind of thing, you're relying on some other entity to manage this mess, right? You just pray that it's going to get better or that they will be rewarded in the afterlife or some system like that. You have less of an incentive to do something about it right now, because it would seem more productive for you, for example, to, instead of preach against capitalism, preach for religion, and therefore more people will be saved. And then instead of the 70, 80 years that they're going to suffer under capitalism, they can live forever in the ultimate capitalist fantasy, heaven, right? So that seems like a worthy cause for them, which is some form of proselytizing compared to putting the same amount of effort into fixing the political or economic system. So you see where
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of this complacency happens in a lot of religious dominated societies.
Totally, because it just gives you an out. Like,
Mhm.
all that matters is that you believe that it's real, even if, I mean, it's hard to say that, like, one of us is going to wake up after death and say, "Oh, there is no heaven."
Yeah.
So, can you blame people for wanting to escape the harsh realities? And I'm not even talking about people where they're really suffering the consequences of capitalism. I'm talking about people in impoverished countries, countries that have been ravaged by capitalism, countries in continents like Asia or Africa or whatever. I'm talking about people who are even more well off, but they're so miserable in their lives, and the only thing they can think of is, oh well, I'm just gonna die, and then oh, it will all be better, because
Mhm.
there doesn't seem to be any realistic alternative to that. One of the things that saddens me the most is hearing stories like about, there was a coworker of my father's who worked really hard in this really stressful job, and he was a cycling enthusiast, and he was in his mid 40s. Retirement is, in a decade or so, a decade, 15 years. He got hit by a car and he died. That's that. That's it. And to think that we spend our lives, a lot of us, doing jobs we don't like, working with people we don't like, doing things that aren't meaningful to us, and then it could all end, is a horrifying, terrifying prospect. To know you could just step outside, get hit by a bus, and that's it. And then what was your life? So
You
believing
know,
that there's more is amazing.
yeah. It crossed my mind in the dumbest ways the other day. I put in a lot of effort into editing this video or another, and I was thinking, if I have an accident right now, all that time that I put into this video is not it's not going to be published. So yeah, if you scale it up to life, I know I had the thought of that's life basically. If you've went through all the suffering and now life is starting to turn up for you, and then boom, you're gone. It sucks, and it's a reality we don't have to face, I suppose. If you're someone who doesn't want to think about it, don't think about it. And religion helps us not think about it. And there were some comments by Us that I want to highlight.
Sure.
He was saying that we could do both, right? Or Islam preaches doing both, which is fixing this life and the afterlife. And my commentary isn't specifically about what does Islam preach, or original Islam, or true Islam, or whatever it may be. It's more about the reality of how it affects people, and not just Islam. If the society, in my opinion, if it reaches a threshold of corruption and poverty and things like that, it's so much easier to latch on to the religious hope than it is to do both, affect actual change and religious hope. If you could spend an extra hour at home or at the mosque or wherever praying, or spend an extra hour making flyers for some political movement that might get you arrested and put in jail, and then you won't be able to provide for your family, you're probably going to take the easier way, which is praying, because that's even more guaranteed. It doesn't, like, just from a logical point of view, if I truly believed, and this may make me seem weird, but if I truly believed in Islam, sure, I would try to do good things for other people, but I would devote more time to the afterlife than the rest of everything. Like, if I had this equivalent of universal basic income, right? If I can get my humanly, worldly needs covered, then I would dedicate every moment to praying, to that investment for the afterlife. So it's not that I criticize people who do that. It's just the reality of it is, if that's your worldview, it makes most sense to invest all of your time into heaven, right?
It makes most sense, actually, if it would actually be a good thing if you're hit by that bus, like tomorrow.
Yeah,
You'll just,
like, especially if you've already invested, right? And you've already bought that crypto early on, and yeah, that's it. You're ready to go. And of course, you should be, and that's the other problem. You should always be afraid that you might go to hell, right? That you should never feel safe that you're going to heaven. Don't get too complacent. But my point with that was, there are other factors involved, but I see this complacency in religious communities, unfortunately, that are already disadvantaged. Like,
I
it's a
agree.
hard
Yeah.
to cross.
Well, you see the whole fatalistic thing of, well, we're at the end times. The end times are coming soon. You can see the signs. There was a guy who was messaging me about that the other day, who was saying, a Muslim, who was saying that you can see the signs of the end times. People are crueler and meaner to each other, and time is moving faster. I remember thinking, like, what do you mean time is moving faster? And he said, didn't feel like it was Monday just a moment ago, or like just the other day. And I thought he was joking, but he was being serious. So there is that too, of the constant. This is a thing that happens in cultures that are, or amongst people who are at a precipice or at a pivotal time of crisis, where they lean on this whole belief that the end times are near. You can see it throughout history. People have been saying the end times are near for thousands and thousands of years, and it's always in times of crisis. It's a coping mechanism.
The kind of longing for the end of time, in a sense, like,
Yeah.
it's the way out, I suppose.
Well,
Or
if your situation is completely hopeless and you've been promised paradise, of course you're going to long for the end times. You're going to long to be with the God who will make sense of everything and will put everything in its right place.
it can also be a way of rationalizing bad things going on around you. You think, this is what we were promised, that the world is getting worse and worse,
Oh,
and
yeah,
that's a sign of the end of times. When in reality, it's better than a lot of other times than it's been, for averages. Speaking of averages,
exactly.
not the extremes, but anyway, yeah. There's a lot to be thought there, but I feel like it's, for me, I'm just looking at it from an outsider's point of view, and I don't even have the luxury of choosing whether to have that illusion of hope or not. So it's, is there truth to this kind of idea that someone who left religion, right, after thinking a lot about it, is going to be more depressed?
It depends. So it depends on how much they took comfort from their religion. I think if they took a lot of comfort from their religion, then yes, it's probably going to happen. And the other thing to note about it, though, is that it's stages. So it's kind of like, to quote Matt Dillahunty from the Atheist Experience, he put it in a very good way. It's like, imagine you're a person who all your life you're promised you're going to get $1 million when you're 50 years old, and your whole life has been built based on this promise. You think maybe a million is these days not enough. 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
$100 million. You're going to get it
You're
when
never
you're
going to have
50.
to worry about money again. Like
Yeah.
that's your
Your
easy
life
retirement.
decisions are going to be built based on that decision. You're going to factor that in everything you do. And what happens when let's say you're 30 and you find out, oh, that wasn't true. You're not getting $100 million. You're gonna feel grief. You're gonna feel disappointment. You're gonna feel anger. You're gonna feel like you wasted parts of your life. That's inevitable because your whole life you've been gearing towards this, and that's the way religion works too. So when you're someone who leaves the religion, you're gonna go through all of those things as well. So of course the thing to say then is maybe we shouldn't teach people these religious beliefs in the first place. Then they would never feel upset about losing something. And I have a friend, actually the same friend who I was having that discussion about getting a career with. He was saying he wasn't raised religiously whatsoever, so he never had this desire or hope for an afterlife or a God who will, give him everything he wants. So he never was hung up about it because he never believed it.
Always then.
I'm sorry. I think your mic cut out there for a second.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We need Apostle Aladdin's cat to rescue this dank discussion. Is dank a good thing or a bad thing here? I don't understand slang anymore.
Well, here's the other thing I would say maybe I'm known for. Once I get into the serious kinds of stuff, talking about the things that preoccupy me and are my concerns, it's not happy stuff. Like it's the things that I'm concerned about, which are like the core problems of the world today that I want to help change, that I want to make better for people. And it isn't very fun because for a lot of them there aren't real solutions, and there's a lot of stuff that are out of our control as individuals. Like, how are we going to fight climate change? We didn't even talk about climate change.
No, let's not get into
no, not at all.
Well, one thing I want to say about that is,
sure,
it's actually, weirdly enough, before it was a long time before my kind of apostasy, if you want to call it that, that final realization that, it's not just nothing adds up. Islam is actually not true. Before that moment, years before that, I started feeling this existential dread of all of these issues in the world, like global warming, like starvation and droughts. There was a few events happening at the time that made me really feel that a lot more. And it got me thinking, well, who's doing anything about that, right? Aside from the whole, like, why is there evil in the world? Why would God let that happen? I started feeling this dread that there's so much I can't do anything about. And I didn't really have faith that this God would do something about it in this life or the afterlife. Or if you think of all the examples of kuffar, for example, who go through the same suffering of the same drought, the same whatever, they're not going to be there's not going to be justice for that. And it's not even like reward in the afterlife makes up for suffering. I mean, you get to a certain threshold where everyone's getting rewarded with everything they want, that they're not really getting any more reward, in my opinion. But anyway, I didn't realize it, but that was a symptom of eventual apostasy, I suppose, is realizing that this God is actually not going to do, even within this kind of paradigm, is not doing anything for those people who are suffering, unless they are Muslim, and even that doesn't add up in my mind. So if you start being concerned about all this stuff and you feel like religion can no longer take that burden off of you, perhaps you're going to be an apostate soon. Who knows? But now I have no choice over my thoughts, but I just preoccupy myself with the thoughts that are more productive. Like I choose to, like, the causes that I can do something about, for example. And that makes me forget about all the causes that I can't do anything about. And that's the one way that I cope with it at the moment. I'm not sure what I'm going to do once I'm kind of past that cause that I'm working on. That is yet to be figured out. And I want to end this on, a couple of, positive notes or something. So I'll read some comments, some kind of questions and interactions, and then, we'll talk about one more thing or something.
The movie recommendations.
Movie recommendations. There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
So Potts says, "What's the deal with super wealthy people and yachts?" I don't know because if
Well, it's
I'm
like
yeah,
once you've bought everything else, you might as well buy a yacht, right?
it's like a house that can move, I guess.
I think
Um,
there's also an element where they compete with each other for the biggest yacht with the most features.
it's like keeping up with the Joneses on on a yacht. I I don't understand the appeal, especially the big ones, because I am I'm not necessarily a lazy person, but I won't walk around the whole yacht. Like I'm not gonna walk around a big, gigantic yacht. Why am I paying for something I'm not even gonna see, realistically? And I don't care to have a huge party where everyone's like, because of my money, they're having a good time, and I don't even know their names. So not really my thing. And
My favorite thing is when the yachts also have swimming pools in them.
yeah,
Because you don't
that's
want to swim in that ocean you're in. You've got a pool.
and then you sit like on a floaty in the pool so that you're not touching the water. Right? It's yeah, it's an excessive gross display of wealth, and it's kind of, if I have all the money, I want to go out and do stuff. I don't want to be in a slow moving gigantic mansion. So I don't know. It feels like some people are so rich, but they're not smart, I guess, or they don't know what to do with their money. Goes to show you that not everybody actually deserves the money that they hoard. Uh, yeah, yachts simply should not exist in a world where famine hasn't been solved. I agree with that. Uh, and a couple more comments. So, um, Robert is asking, is the poutine good in Toronto?
Meh.
Meh.
Go to Montreal if you want the good stuff with the smoked meat.
Well,
Oh
there's
yeah,
your
the
answer.
Montreal smoked meat.
There you go. And I wanted to address this. It's unfortunate Oos is not here to have like a back and forth in person with us, but I wanted to comment on this. He was saying, I remember I also heard that a sign of the end of the world is that a mother will birth her master. Of course, living in the West, you could see something like that daily. And
I do vaguely remember being taught
I
something like
vaguely
that.
remember that. I don't remember the specific wording.
Yeah, that's what it means essentially. That the
And he
kids
was
will
saying,
rule their parents.
but let me, and this crossed my mind as I was reading that. Can't it be argued, because it's so vague of a prophecy, can't it be argued that even in Islamic times it was already happening, because the man of the house has more authority over his mother, over his wife, over his mother-in-law than the woman would have. So in a sense, that's already being fulfilled, right?
But he does
He
so out of respect.
Right, but it fulfills the prophecy, which is he is her master in certain situations. But the point is, it's kind of vague. It's easy to fit something like that into it. I don't know. Um, but yeah, some people might see it as birrul walidain, like being good to your parents. That people don't do that. That's a sign of the end of the times. But it sounds like one of those scare tactics, like when your parents say, "If you don't do this, the afterlife
It's
is gonna come
exactly
soon."
what it is. It's exactly what it is.
I don't know. It's open ended. Yeah, and you said, okay, I'll leave it to you to give us your amazing movie recommendations. You've hyped it up so much, so they better be good.
Well. The thing is about the movie recommendations. I figured I'm not gonna recommend things that he's probably seen or that are like really universally well known. So I've got a couple of. They're still sort of well known movies, but I'm gonna bet that you haven't heard of any of them.
Okay.
So the first one is a movie called The Holy Mountain. So this is an independent movie from the early 70s from this really renowned what were they called? Art house director, or whatever they're called. Like, so he's not like a Hollywood prominent director.
Okay.
Alejandro Jodorowsky. And I saw this movie when I was still like just out of university, and I highly recommend it because it was one of the weirdest, most bizarre movies I've ever seen. So I almost wish we could just play the trailer so people could see what I'm talking about. But the movie just kind of is littered with all sorts of bizarre imagery. So things like frogs dressed up as conquistadors and people marching with like skinned dogs or something, not real, I hope, on sticks through a street. And at first I was thinking, what the hell is this movie? So essentially what the plot is there's someone who kind of looks like Jesus, who then starts using his likeness to Jesus to basically make money. And
Wait, is it one of those movies like the Monty Python and the Holy Grail kind of movies?
no, it's definitely a drama.
Okay.
It is a satire though. So we start following this Jesus character, and he's just trying to make money off his whole Jesus persona. But the main plot of the movie is about this character I think called the Alchemist. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. Some spiritual leader, and he leads 9 people who are all leaders in their specific trade or field. They're basically people who've mastered their domain of life, and they all go on this quest to seek these elders at the top of this mountain, the holy mountain. And they want to go there because the elders will give them the secret to immortality. And so you follow them on this quest, but on this journey, you're just bombarded by all of these ritual, like depictions of rituals, all these depictions of different cultures and how they practiced all sorts of esoteric beliefs. There's a lot of weird music, and there's a lot of just weird imagery, like I discussed. And I remember watching this movie and thinking, and you're probably thinking this too, watching, like, what the hell is this movie? What on earth is it about? And it just keeps going like that. And I realized towards the end, and I'm not going to spoil the end, but I realized what the movie is doing, and this is my theory. I didn't read this or anything. It's just kind of what I realized my epiphany was, and why I love the movie so much is the movie is just showing us, is bombarding us with all of the attempts that humans have made over the centuries, the millennia, to try to make sense of life, to try to give life meaning, to to make the things that they're doing in life have meaning. And that's what all those religious rituals, these rites, these traditions are all built on. They're trying to structure our lives and give like some kind of like holy, divine, intrinsic aspect to it to make our lives livable. And what this movie does by showing it all in all these like absurd ways, where it's just like you're just getting inundated with it, where it just doesn't all make sense, is showing it's like all busy work. It's all just this noise. And
Mhm.
the end, which I won't spoil, confirms that. All these people are pursuing this thing, like they want to get this immortality. Why is their fixation? Like what is the thing that's driving all of us in life? You'll see it at the end.
All
So
right.
I think if you're someone who's a religious person and you watch that movie, it will make you look at your religion in a different way completely.
Um, that's a strong assertion to make, but
If
one
you're
would
open
hope.
to listening the message to the message.
Mhm. I, I was thinking about that. It clicked for me also when I was looking at documentary about cults and seeing, oh, they're doing a meaningless ritual, but that seems a lot like something that I think is justified or sensible because what? And then that's when I realized, oh, because it's just what I'm used to, right? But it boils down to something similar. And then there are Muslims who do make sense of it by thinking that it's all symbolic, like this is symbolic of, or Christians too, like this is symbolic of Jesus's flesh, and this is symbolic of whatever. And but the more you trace it back, the more you realize it's common in a lot of these religions. Um, so I find it weird, and I want to understand how one would look at theirs and the similarities, with others, and think, but this is special because I want to hear that, not to shut it down, but I am always curious what makes this special, and especially when I see them talking to each other about it, because that's the best moment for them to realize the similarities. And something I noticed here, someone was saying, Mohio was saying, religion is the opium of the people. I think it was of the masses, was the quote,
Of the Is it Marx maybe? I think.
something like that. And I don't remember what the whole quote was, so I'm not quoting it. But Oos made a good point, which is entertainment today is the opium of the
It's
people.
exactly. I do agree with that. It's the distraction. Like I was mentioning earlier, when you just have like this miserable life, like work life, you just want to go and just zone out and watch like celebrity tabloids or watch a sitcom or whatever. I'm not denigrating those things, but they are being used as an escape.
Yeah. A couple more comments. So Reminiscence is saying, anyone seen Idiocracy?
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
I have. It's a fun movie. It's one of those movies, you know, the movies where you know everything's going to turn out okay and it's just fun to watch and stuff. You're not
Yeah.
too stressed about
It's
it.
meant to make you think a little bit, but also
Don't think too hard. No. Just
also
think of
meant to
it.
be an opium of the masses.
Yeah.
Dun
Yeah.
dun dun.
It's like a pseudo intellectual, haha, everybody sucks. I know that now. And then you go back to your capitalist life. That's what it's about.
Oh man, I'm rubbing off on you. What have I done? The
No, it's always
dankness,
been
the dankness is rubbing off.
the anti-capitalist has been in me all along. That's the real treasure right there. And the last comment I was looking at here is Zagros is saying, did you know that there's a movie about Muhammad's life which used to be displayed in Turkey during Ramadan where Muhammad was portrayed as a black man? I did not know
No.
that.
What's Zagros? Tell us, what is the name of this movie?
Yeah, don't be shy.
I'm
Drop it
very
in the chat.
curious.
I wonder if you'd be able to find it at all, but yeah, that's interesting. Like, who thought that it was a good idea to make? Because that takes a while to make that movie, right?
And like, I'm curious to know, is it a Turkish movie, or was it made in the West? Or I guess we'll find out if Zagros shares.
Well, if it was
name.
played during Ramadan, then it's like a Muslim made it, right? So not really. I don't know.
I mean, it's possible. Yeah.
We'll see what Zagros comes back with. The messenger, he says, "I've been looking for the past few years."
Do you know its name? Zagros. That's
it's probably googling like a
he's
black
probably
man
Googling right now.
Muhammad. Ramadan Turkey. I don't know. That's how you research, apparently. Yeah. Okay. And he says, but I can't find it. It wasn't a Turkish movie, but it was played on Turkish TV. You know what? Find somebody from Vice Media or something and, go on a deep dive.
I have a Turkish friend, so maybe I can ask
There you
him
go.
and he knows.
Connect together after the call. Yeah. And do you have another movie recommendation? Yeah.
So this is one recommendation for two movies that are pretty similar.
Okay.
So first of all, did you hear about The Holy Mountain? That was my bet that you probably haven't.
No, I have not.
Okay. So have you ever heard of these documentaries called Baraka and Samsara?
No.
These ones I highly recommend, even more so than The Holy Mountain. They're newer and probably easier to watch than The Holy Mountain. They're documentaries that have no real structure and no narration. What they do is basically this production company sent these camera crews all over the world, and they just captured different aspects of people's lives. And then they just took all that footage and put it together. So there's no narrator explaining anything. You're just glimpsing people's lives around the world. And there's certain themes that come through that I think the filmmakers wanted to explore. And one of them is just like exploring how people try to find inspiration in life, how people, express their spirituality. And they also explore things like the capitalist condition. And really is just putting yourself in the perspective of other people. One of the
What is it called? Baraka and the
Baraka and Baraka, I think I could be wrong about this, but it's based on the Arabic word baraka.
Okay.
So that's the first one. I think it came out in the early 90s, and then basically the same people made Samsara 20 years later, give or take. And one of the famous scenes from it is one that's maybe you've seen on YouTube. There's a lot of famous clips from it. Is where they just follow a factory of chickens, like little baby chicks, and it just shows the whole process of in like fast forwarded footage, I think, of how the chicks are processed and separated by male and female, and then they do all sorts of things to them that I'm not gonna like. It's not horrifying, like it's not like one of those movies that like shows you animals being slaughtered, but what it does do is it just shows how the factory farming process works. And then what it does is it cuts between showing those little chicks being processed through this factory to showing human beings just walking through and doing their robotic behavior and being funneled into trains and funneling out to trains. And so that's the kind of the beautiful thing about the documentaries, is that it lets you kind of draw your own conclusions and makes interesting connections between things. And one of the things I like the most as well is, I think this is a practice of Buddhist monks. They make these things called mandalas, and it's basically sand art. So they make these big, expansive things made of just sand, colored sand, intricate, crazy patterns. And throughout this one documentary, I can't remember if it's Samsara or Baraka, but they make them over the course, and you see it becoming bigger and bigger. And in the end, they just destroy it. They just wipe all the sand. So it's completed for 1 second,
Hey, that's
and
a
then it's just
major
wiped away.
spoiler right there.
It's one of those movies where spoilers do not matter. There's no beginning, middle, of end. You're just kind of witnessing life.
I wanted to feel that disappointment. I wanted to feel that shock.
I'm sorry.
You're bad at recommending movies, man. But I hope the movies make up for it. So you're on thin ice.
Yeah. Well, I'll save any more recommendations for a future chat then. But the last thing I just want to say about them is, I think it's one of those things where you just watch and you're just blown away by the variety of human life, and how there's, as much as there's a lot that's different about us, there's a lot that unites us. And I think it just gives you a chance to just step outside of your own perspective. And what comes from that, I don't know. Hopefully good things. Hopefully when we do that, we just stop, just running the mouse wheel of our lives, and
The hamster
wheel. Yeah, sorry. And maybe decide that's not what we want to do.
You know what this reminds me of, this word that I have a feeling this is what the movie is going to induce. This word sonder. I don't know if you. Yeah, it's defined as the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own.
That's the definition of the word.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, today we learn a new word of the day, sonder. I have a feeling that's kind of what is that what you experienced after watching such a movie, like realizing that there are other people out there?
Well, it's not just that there's other people out there. It's just that it's overwhelming to think of how much is happening out there, and it's hard to comprehend what it all means and where it's all going. It made me feel like everything that's going on is like flowing, but there's no one. It's going somewhere, but there's no one really at the steering wheel. It's just things happening, and it goes where it may, and some of it makes sense to us, some of it we can see the connections, other times it's just life.
If only there were an overarching plan, right?
Well, we say if only, and is that just like our weird human brain bias? Like, do we want there to be an overarching plan? Because then we'd be stuck to it, like we'd be confined to it. Maybe it's more freeing that there isn't an overarching plan. Although that's scary, because then we don't know where things are going, and we'll realize that we're the ones in control.
Well, some people find reassurance in knowing that that plan is good, I guess, and that no matter what happens, things are going to work out. The problem is or a majority of that plan is in the afterlife, which is unverifiable. So for all you know, that plan is bunk, and what happens in real life, there's no plan. This is actually what goes on.
Also, who decides that it's good?
Yeah.
According to what criteria?
The promise of the plan maker, allegedly plan maker.
So each person's subjective desire of what that good plan maker would want for them.
Yeah. I mean,
how convenient.
Yep. The only thing I wish for in terms of a higher power is it would relieve me of some of the stress and responsibility that I feel. Like, it's okay, I don't have to worry that much about people around me who aren't my close ones, because you've got it covered, right? Oh, holy one, right? Like, you made this happen. It's your responsibility to take care of those people. But not knowing whether that's true or not, or seeing the evidence being that there's no evidence pointing to that being true, I feel that burden myself. and I can't do anything about it most of the time, and that there's that feeling of responsibility that you have to be doing something about it. So that I would hope for, that if we all kind of cover our fair share of responsibility, that we don't all have to feel guilty and stressed all the time about it. Um, and I guess that's kind of a positive note to end on, is it?
Yeah.
That
That's a
that's
great
a
way to.
solution.
Well, we, and this is a thing that I think religious people will agree with, is we kind of have to accept that our power to shape the world and make change is limited. We are limited human beings as individuals. There's only so much we can do. There's only so much impact we can make. But even if that's the case, doing something is better than doing nothing. Even just talking about it and trying to share those ideas with other people is better than doing nothing. And I think that if we all just kind of do our part, facing the reality of the challenges that we have, facing the harsh realities of life, that's better than doing nothing. Sure, yes, like the under the foundations, the underpinning of our society is based on horrible things, and even human existence, the way our life has reached this point is built on a lot of suffering. That's unavoidable. But just because these are the realities doesn't mean we should hide from them. It doesn't mean that we should escape them or take comfort. Oh, they're all for a good reason in the end. No, sometimes suffering is just suffering. Sometimes bad things just happen. What we should do is face those things head on, accept them, and try to do our best in spite of them. So, for example, I talk about this stuff all the time. I don't dwell on it in a way in which it incapacitates me. I used to be like that when I was younger, but I found that limiting. So it's always with me, these dank thoughts, these dank realizations.
We should have a podcast and call it Dank Thoughts.
I'd be down for that.
Yeah.
But even though that's the case, I still try to do my best in spite of them. I don't try to hide them and pretend they're not there.
Yeah. Well,
Good way
yeah,
to end, I suppose.
somewhat of a
I hope
positive
everyone
note.
else does the same too.
Yeah. So just take a chill pill. It's just life, to sum it up.
Not everything is on your shoulders, but
No.
it doesn't mean that you should not take a little bit on your shoulders.
Yep. And you should get a cat, apparently, by popular demand. That'll cure him of what? Of his
The
condition?
dankness,
The dank-
obviously.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. Don't forget to
Thank you
go
so much.
follow him on, like, his link is below. Go follow his channel. We talk there sometimes, and he's got already 2 streams that we've done together that he's prepped for hanging out with the Sahaba. Very excellent streams. You should go watch those. Not right now, because that's too much to be listening to us for over 2 hours, so give it a break and then go watch that another time. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Secular Spirit, Alim, for being here.
Thank you for having me as always. Hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah, we definitely will. Take care, everybody, and think critically, think for yourself.